Every challenge is not just a set of circumstances. Behind every choice, even a random one, there is a story, a desire to try something new or to get better. Learning Spanish is not a necessity. For everyday tasks, Google Translate works just fine. But sometimes there is no connection, thanks to local operators, and you need to ask for directions to the restroom or clarify if the taco is spicy or very spicy. In such a moment, you regret not having at least basic knowledge of the language. Before New Year's Eve, we were walking downtown buying clothes and of course we got hungry. Right on our way, there was a small street cafe where they made different versions of tacos. So we asked if we could have this tortilla, of course pointing at it and repeating "con pollo, con pollo." The lady smiled, asked us something and nodded. And we kept repeating "con pollo, con pollo." She made the tortilla in a special press, then threw it on something like large griddle, grilled it and added chicken meat. And everything was going well. But at that moment she took out a big jar of green sauce and slammed probably half a liter of sauce right onto the tortilla. Unfortunately, we had already had a chance to meet the sauce. Back then, we added it little by little and cringed from the burning spiciness. We only needed to say "no picante por favor" and the meal would have been completely different. On the other hand, we learned our lesson from this. And if you remember, in the beginning of the challenge I went to Guatemala. On one of the very first days Alyosha called me and said that early in the morning the intercom started ringing. Some drunk voice presumably was asking about letting them immediately. This guy and his friends had a noisy party at night and didn't let anyone sleep, and in the morning they couldn't even dial the right door. Alyosha went out to the balcony to see them in person, gave them a scorching look and sternly said "Ay, ay, ay." When I heard the story I thought, what would I have said? Most likely I would also have given them a stern look, shouted something like "Hey!" and threatened them with a fist. Of course, the same day we learned a few swear words and the next such guy will be greeted with at least comprehensible "Basta, eres cabrón!" In May 1997, our plane landed at Amsterdam airport and was now taxiing to the sleeve. I'm a 12-year-old boy, for the first time abroad, staring outside, hoping to see all the miracles of the Western world. My parents participated in a Russian-Dutch theater project. This time they took me with them to the Netherlands. I had been learning German in a school for about 4 years at that point, and here almost everyone speaks it. For the next 10 days I went with my parents to theaters, shops, cafes, beaches, but for some reason I was shy to speak. I only tried to speak German once. During rehearsal, all the theater kids sat in one room, equipped as a kitchen, and ate and drank. I was drinking coffee with milk and was the only child who was allowed coffee. In front of me sat a 5-year-old son of Dutch director. Maybe because of increased caffeine in my blood, I got courageous and asked the boy, "Wie heißt du?" He scaredly plushed his eyes at me and replied something in Dutch. At that moment I realized that Dutch people start learning German and English only in school. They are not born with this knowledge. Finally, on one of the last days, we were sitting in the tiny kitchen of our apartment in downtown Amsterdam and having breakfast. Parents apparently decided to make a final surprise for me and promised to buy an electronic notebook. Now it's hard to explain what is it. Let's say a micro laptop that can only be used for notes and contacts. But I dreamed of such a thing. Parents didn't understand anything about them, so I would have to open my mouth to make a purchase and say at least a few words. It's impossible to tell you how my mom was surprised when we came to a small electronics store in an underground passage and I immediately overcame all my fears and shyness. According to the story, I started energetically asking the seller about the functions of the devices and prices. And in the end, I had an electronic notebook in my hands. Now, my parents were sure that I could speak German. I learned that speaking a foreign language is not scary, and if you have a goal, it becomes much easier to overcome barriers. When I was in Guatemala, I noticed how just a couple of days of trying to speak broken Spanish improves my speech. It becomes easier to pick words, pronounce them, and understand what is being said to you. We need to use every opportunity, so consider learning a new language before your next vacation in a foreign country. In 2017, during our honeymoon, Alyosha and I stopped for a week in Berlin, and missing our native food, we found a Russian cuisine. The cuisine was Russian, but the restaurant was still German. The waitress was polite, but not very friendly. She calmly spoke to us in English, but as soon as I remembered a few words in German, the woman changed. A smile appeared on her face, she became interested whether we liked everything and helped with advice as much as she could. I'd like to hope that I was able to inspire you a little to learn a new language. It doesn't matter if it's Spanish, German or Chinese. There are many opportunities in the world and just as many languages. Knowing languages is useful, it helps to win people's favor, to react promptly to what's happening around, and it keeps the brain in good shape. And to make the language part of you, you need to use it. Watch movies and listen to podcasts or radio, write posts on social networks or make simple notes, and if possible, speak with native speakers. And finally, a small exam from my wife Aliusha. She chose one word from each day and will now interrogate me zealously. Let's see what's left in my memory after the challenge.
Земля.
Tierra.
Лево, левый.
Izquierda.
Да. Ветер.
Viento.
Да. Сухой.
Seco.
Да. Кричать.
Gritar.
Да. Лучше.
Mejor.
Центр, середина.
Centro.
Да. Размер.
Tamaño.
Да. Магазин.
Tienda.
Да. Мягкий.
Suave.
Да. Чистый.
Claro. Limpio.
Да. Ломать.
Не кибрар, это... Как?
Ромпер.
Romper.
Бедный.
Pobre.
Безопасный, надежный.
Seguro.
Да. Процесс.
Proceso.
Процессор?
Нет?
Процессор,
Да.
да. Представлять себе.
Imaginar.
Да. Входить.
Entrar.
Да. Доля.
Quota.
Да. Жидкость. Жидкий.
Liquid.
Ага.
Liquido.
Да. Мечтать.
Sueñir.
Ну, бросай слово.
Ну, sueño и soñar.
Да. Молодец. Лагерь.
Campamento.
Да. Слышать.
Oír.
Грустно.
Triste.
Начинать.
Empezar.
Как?
Empezar. Comenzar.
Да. Чемпион.
Campeón.
Чемпион. Карман.
Bolsillo.
Да. Мэр.
Alcalde.
Да. Черт возьми.
Caramba.
Печень.
Hígado.
Да. Молчать.
Callar.
Все правильно.
Yeah. Yeah.